Well, I'm delighted to be here. It's been a great conference. I'm very thankful for the funding for this project. Today I'm going to talk about some new results. Actually, got them on October 25th, so very fresh, on a project where we were trying to discover what people really know about target date funds. And we used a variety of methods, focus groups, and survey evidence to try to figure out what people know. And this is a joint project with Lisa Seichman, who is a marketing professor at the College of William & Mary, and once again the Vanguard group. Steve is very active on this panel. Stephen Uckus and Jean Young, who's in the audience and will be helping out with the Q&A at the end. Just to give you some background, I know this is a very sophisticated audience, so most of you know what target date funds are, but they're designed to be this single option where a person could invest, have a very broadly diversified portfolio that would gradually become more conservative as they approach retirement. And the idea is that it really simplifies the investor's decisions. They don't have to decide which funds they need to invest in, nor do they need to think about when they need to rebalance over time. And the idea is that you can overcome some of the problems that we've seen, the under-diversification that you mentioned, inertia where people aren't rebalancing over time, and also lack of financial literacy, which Olivia has done a lot of research to show that that exists. Now, the market for these products is quite large. In 2002, it accounted for about $15 billion. But by 2009, this market represents $256 billion. In addition, these target date funds are quite often an option in a 401k menu. So in 2009, if we just look at the Vanguard universe of funds, which is our proprietary source of data, 75% of those 401k plans offered a target date fund. One of the drivers behind this growth is actually the increase in automatic enrollment. So at Vanguard, about 20% of all plans offer automatic enrollment, and if you look, 90% in 2009 offered a target date fund as the default option. Now, what's really interesting about these target date funds is they're designed to be this single option. But several years ago, I was working with some administrative data. It wasn't from Vanguard, but I thought there was a big error in my data because I was noticing that people were investing in multiple funds. And I spent about 2 weeks pulling my hair out and finally talked to the plan administrator, and they said, no, this is actually the way people invest with these. And Jean has done a lot of research in this area, and a project that they did last year shows that you can see a variety of different strategies using target date funds. 46% are what we call pure investors. They put everything in the target date funds. The remainder do various allocations. So for instance, they might hold multiple target date funds, or they might hold a target date fund and some other assets. And we were really curious, why are people doing this? What are the drivers? And this is very difficult to get at when you're just looking at administrative data. So we set out to figure out what these determinants were, whether they were psychological, whether they were rational, or whether they were somehow related to financial literacy. And we started out by just asking people. We conducted 4 focus groups, 2 in Washington, 2 in Philadelphia, and we had people that were pure investors and mixed investors, and we asked them, why are you doing this? After doing that, we created a survey informed from the focus groups and went out and surveyed approximately 2,000 Vanguard participants and tried to get a little bit more detail in terms of what they're doing and tied this survey data to the administrative data. So, feelings about retirement savings. This is my favorite part of the talk. When we were trying to do an icebreaker and just to get a general sense of how people were thinking about retirement, we asked them to go over to a desk and they could choose from several hundred pictures. And they were supposed to take 2 or 3 that represented how they felt. And of course, you had several people that took a nice picture of them walking on the beach in retirement or fishing, but a large number picked very disturbing pictures. And one of the most commonly picked pictures was this. This is how people are feeling. And then we pressed a little bit further, and we said, why did you choose this picture? What does this represent? And because of time, I'm not going to read the quotes, but I'll try to paraphrase what's in them. We had one gentleman that said, I felt like I was in the hands of other people. I felt totally powerless when the market crashed. Another individual said, there are just too many choices. I don't know what's right or wrong. And I just don't, she says, I'd like to be able to understand what's going on, but I just don't. So this feeling I don't get what's happening. And then another person, and I apologize if there are any mutual fund managers here, but said, I think the barber represents the managers who are doing your mutual funds. And basically this person's saying, I felt out of control. After we ask them about their general feelings, we then drill down and say, well, why do you invest the way that you do? And there were some major themes that emerged when we listened to what people were saying. First of all, trust in financial managers and financial institutions. A lot of people have concerns. It's probably based on recent events. There were many people that understood target date products and were using them appropriately or using rational methods when they were choosing their allocation strategies. But then there were several that didn't quite understand what this product was. We had people that wanted to have control, so they didn't want somebody else making their decision. And we wanted people that just didn't want to have anything to do with making a decision and liked the fact that everything was done for you. People were overwhelmed, like the previous quote. And then there was this naive diversification heuristic where people didn't quite grasp that it was a diversified product and thought they still needed to hold other funds. So here's some quotes from some pure investors. Lots of them really liked the all-in-one feature. This person right here said, if you're financially savvy, then I'm sure you can choose different funds, but this all-in-one captures me. I'm not financially savvy, so it's who I am. Another individual said, you don't have to make the decision yourself as well. There's less worrying. So this is somebody that liked to give up control. Then we talked to the mixed investors, and I can't go through all their responses, but I found that the diversification was rather interesting. So we asked people why they didn't think one target date fund was sufficient. We asked this one person, and they said, well, when I'm thinking about using my target date funds, if I have 10 funds, then I put 10% of my contribution onto those. And then we asked a little bit further, and they said, I just wanted to be diversified. Another person said, and everybody was talking about eggs in these focus groups. I don't know if Jean agrees, but it just kept coming up. And one person said, I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket, no matter how good the basket is supposed to be. Trust, again, large issue, and so people were diversifying for trust issues. This was one individual, and they said, well, of course I would not trust all my money to one person. It just goes against the whole diversification thing. And then pressed a little bit further by the moderator, they said, yeah, it would be ideal if you could invest in multiple target date funds managed by different people with different underlying assets. So we have some preliminary results. Once again, we just got these. We were very lucky to be able to source Vanguard's data. Over 1 million actively contributing participants we were able to survey from, representing 1,500 401k plans. And we broke our sample into 3 different groups: those that are pure, those that are mixed, and those that are non-target. In the future, we're going to have to do a lot with weighting, but here's some of the initial results. First of all, when we asked individuals, are you pure, are you mixed, or are you non-target, we found that 45% of the people knew which bucket they fell into. But we had a large percent that inaccurately reported what they were. We had 20% that had never heard of target date funds, and 10% that were not sure. And initially, this might feel alarming, but then if you look at some of the research that Vanguard's already done, oftentimes people might think they're pure, but they're actually mixed because the plan sponsor actually matches in a different type of fund. So there are some actions that they don't control. In addition, automatic enrollment, if you're automatically enrolled and defaulted, you might not know what you're invested in. However, it was interesting. We did look a little bit closer at people that were pure target date investors, and there were several that voluntarily enrolled, chose that fund, and said that they had never heard of the product. Something to think about. Now, once again, this is not surprising either, based on the work that's been done by several of the people on the panel. When we asked people how much time they spent initially choosing their funds in their 401k, less than half reported spending more than a little bit of time. And nearly half reported not considering other assets. And initially, I found this interesting, but then from talking to other people, there is the point that many people don't have assets outside of their 401k plan. So we have some data that we can look a little further at this. So what were the reasons for pure allocations? Pure investors thought that it was an easy way to diversify, it was a simple investment option, and they liked the fact that somebody else was doing it for them. If we then asked the mixed investors, they were the ones that were saying 75% that you think you need to hold other investments with target retirement funds to be adequately diversified. So it's this diversification issue. Many also wanted to hold more aggressive investments, and this isn't necessarily irrational. There were several people in the focus group that said, I looked at the allocation and I decided I needed to take a little bit more risk. So they were following very sophisticated strategies, and others wanted to customize their portfolio. Finally, with the non-target date investors, once again, these are the people that they want to make their own investment decisions. That was the most commonly chosen choice. So we really wanted to get out, well, do they understand these funds? So we asked them some very basic questions that people should know. And all in all, I think individuals grasp that, they're not guaranteed. Maybe recent events made that clear to them. They understood that they were a diversified mixed stock of bonds and bonds, and they knew that they became more conservative. However, when you ask the more advanced questions, this is our educational opportunity. Many people just don't know what happens when you get to the target date year. Some didn't know with Vanguard funds, the allocation continues to change after the target year. Only, 28% knew that. They didn't know that they could keep their investments in there. Only 47% understood that they could keep them in there. And also, some people actually thought you had to withdraw at the target year. So there are these very big, more advanced concepts that I think that we could probably educate the population a little bit better with. What's also interesting is if you break it down by the type of holder, the people that actually hold them understand these things better. And finally, this is a bit of a busy graph, but I'll try to highlight some important parts. It's that diversification issue again. And what we found is for people that thought that one target date fund was sufficient for diversification, the pure investors really buy that. But then if you look at the mix and the non-target date investors, they really disagree, and they think that you need to own more. So the conclusion is that our very, very preliminary results have provided a little insight into what people are thinking about these target date allocations. The pure investors definitely like the simplicity and the diversification. The mixed investors think they actually need to diversify more and only want to hold these target dates as a part of their portfolio. And the non-target date investors want to make their own decisions. They understand the basic concepts. They need a little help understanding the more advanced topics. And in the future, what we're really looking forward to doing is doing some more sophisticated econometric analysis. We're really going to delve into the trust issue, literacy measures, and people's feelings of being overwhelmed. So I think we're going to learn a lot from this data I'm really looking forward to looking at.